Whether we are there or not, ITSP Magazine still gets the best stories. Plenty of conferences and events spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli go on location and sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity. ThreatLocker is a zero-trust endpoint protection platform, providing enterprise-level cybersecurity to organizations globally. With ThreatLocker, you only allow only what you need and block everything else, including ransomware. Learn more at threatlocker.com.
Shall we?
Here we are.
Marco?
Well, we came all the way from LA for this. Shall we? I mean, what kind of question is that? Che domanda?
Doesn't matter, you know?
Doesn't matter, you.
We could go for a coffee rather than having a podcast.
We need a coffee for sure.
Yeah.
I've only had 3 this morning.
Yeah, definitely.
You're way behind.
I know. So, no, it's an absolute pleasure to be here in Melbourne for Australia Cyber Con, hosted by AISA, and pleasure to meet you, Ivano.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to meet you guys.
You're a busy person this week with a few sessions.
Yeah, a few. Just that one now and 2 more coming tomorrow. But it's all great. I love it.
It's all good. It's all good, and great to be in Australia and the APJ region. We're going to learn about some of the work that you do and some of the things you've been talking about this week. Perhaps a few words about what you're up to. The AUSCERT and some of the work that you're doing, and other things. Anything you want to highlight would be great.
Of course, not a problem. So as I say, thanks for having me. So my name is Ivano Bongiovanni, as you can tell from my name and in my accent. I'm Italian, but been in Australia for a while now. I'm currently the general manager for AUSCERT, which is one of the Australian CERTs, Computer Emergency Response Teams. We're actually the second oldest CERT in the world after your CERT, the Carnegie Mellon one over in the US CERT. Been operating for 31 years. Now I cannot claim any bragging rights or anything because I've been in the role for 7 months only. So I have just joined, and it's been an amazing 7 months. You might not know, AUSCERT is closely associated with the University of Queensland over in Brisbane, so we're effectively part of UQ. And I also maintain an academic role as a senior lecturer in cybersecurity at UQ. So I got this interesting double role where I still get to do research, and part of what I'm talking tomorrow is based on my research, but I also have this task of managing the AUSCERT team and trying to see what's next for AUSCERT moving forward.
Can I ask this question quickly? Do some of the students get to participate in AUSCERT? Do they get to be part of it, contribute to some of the research to what the team does? Yeah,
AUSCERT is more like a standalone entity, if you want, within UQ. UQ has this big research center called UQ Cyber. So students typically participate in UQ Cyber. Having said that, we do have graduates that transition from the University of Queensland into AUSCERT and come and work for us. So it does happen. Obviously, the proximity with the university makes it a little bit easier to have access to talent, which is, as you know very well, especially in Australia, is a big issue these days.
Yeah.
So we say you're a busy guy here in these days, and tell us a little bit about the presentation that you're having here.
Yeah, so I'm having 2 presentations tomorrow. One is a more traditional presentation, the other one is a workshop. So in the presentation, I will be talking about a piece of research that I've done with my team at the University of Queensland on the factors that affect decision making in cybersecurity. The workshop will be more around data governance practices. So maybe I'll say a little bit about the first one and then about the second one as well. So the piece of research was conducted with 6 large organizations across different industries. And what we did, we interviewed 6 cyber professionals in each of those organizations. We looked at people at the operational level, so your typical SOC analysts, at the tactical level, which is what we define GRC space, so really risk and compliance and support to operations, and then at the strategic level, being that your CISO, your C-suite, board members, and so on. And what we asked them was to try and unpack when they make cybersecurity decisions at all of those levels. So from how do I configure my SIEM into how am I going to write my incident response policy? What are the contents that I'm going to put into it? Into shall we take cyber insurance or not? Try to figure out what are the factors that drive those decisions. When you are in the moment where you and your team have to make the decision, what are you thinking of? Because we thought that if we were able to map all of that out, it would be a great reflection tool for decision makers in organizations to go, hey, I know what the evidence is telling me. Have I looked at all the different things that could impact my decision? Have I thought of everything before I made the decision? So the findings were quite interesting from that perspective, and tomorrow's presentation is going to be mainly about what those findings are.
I'm going to guess money.
Yeah, that's one of the big ones. Yeah, that's a good guess. Possibly so we actually identified 4 levels of impacts. What happens at the industry level as an impact? What happens at the organizational level? What happens at the team level? And what does happen at the individual level? So those are the 4 slices that we have identified. Certainly money is a big one. That's at the organizational level. At the industry level, probably stronger than that, and even more stronger, is regulations. Right? Yeah. So obviously, exactly. Compliance, we know that it's not perfect. It doesn't really drive performance, but at least we found out that it's a good first input for companies to do something, right, about their cybersecurity controls. And then there's other interesting factors that go down to the organizational level. I'm thinking of organizational culture. Are we risk averse or not? Down to the more individual level. So things such as access and exposure to fora, like for example AISA, so access to knowledge and being part of a group of professionals that work in the same profession has a strong impact in how people make decisions. Because obviously if you have heard somebody talk about something in their own experience, especially when you don't have other evidence to make your decision, you can probably rely on that, right? Yeah. And good or bad that can be, because in some cases it might lead to suboptimal decisions. But we thought that it's important to at least have an understanding that that's what happens in people's brain. And obviously then there's biases, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We are all affected by our biases and how we make decisions, and we need to be conscious of those at least.
So two questions for you on this. So, and we've heard referenced here in the last couple of days, FS-ISAC having a presence here, which ISACs and ISAOs are U.S. rooted initially. Are there extensions here from the U.S., and does Australia have their own info sharing orgs?
Yeah, we do. So there's a lot of ISACs across Australia, across different industries. One example, for example, is in the higher education sector. I'm thinking of universities. So in Australia we have 43 universities, if I'm not wrong, and there's an ISAC that is set up by an overarching body that actually facilitates information exchange within that specific industry. We also, I know that Australia is in the process of setting up a healthcare ISAC, so obviously dedicated to organizations that operate in that specific industry. And needless to say, we know information sharing in cybersecurity is essential. So there's a lot of work that is currently being done on trying to raise awareness on the fact that, hey, it is okay to share things such as your IOCs or dynamics that you're seeing in your environment within certain containers where it is safe to do so. And even in terms of the recent regulations, I'm thinking obviously you guys are aware of the cybersecurity bill and are aware of the fact that there is now a mandate to disclose ransomware payments. Obviously that speaks to the fact that even the regulator is saying, don't worry about sharing, we're not going to come after you because you have shared. So that speaks to this willingness to create safe conditions for sharing. And again, I can speak about the higher education sector. It is a great industry from that perspective, because there's this willingness to really collaborate, because people know that, you know, today is me, tomorrow is you, right? So we need to kind of make sure that we are across the threats that we're facing.
Yeah,
absolutely. The second question I had is around data, but less about the threat and attacks and IOC and indicator of compromise, and more about what's inside the organization. So I have a belief that there's security data that can help define a business opportunity, or at least unlock opportunities within the business, which is kind of at the strategic level of maybe some of the research you did. Are we starting to see where security can help define where business should focus and to unlock new opportunities?
Have I got a couple of hours?
Sure, come back.
It is a great area of passion for me, what you just mentioned. And actually, it's a great segue to my second presentation, which is this workshop on data governance. My answer to your question is yes. And we actually, and it's not just me saying it, we heard of it from Joe Sullivan's presentation. And I attended a couple of other presentations where there were people saying the amount of data that security as a function has access to is unbelievable, right? Now, data governance is a tricky one, because as we say, it's not a sexy topic. It is extremely difficult to do. Because, you know, for some of those large organizations, just even knowing where your data is, who has access to it, under what conditions, and what are they doing with it, is that personal identifiable information or not? All of those questions are incredibly difficult to answer. And I do have a feeling, this is not evidence-based, but based on my conversations, I do have a feeling that it's a lot of the too hard to do basket, right? And that's why I think that there's been such a strong drive on cybersecurity investment. And I always use the analogy of a pyramid. By over-investing in cyber, we're really patching the top of the pyramid, but oftentimes we forget about the foundations, which is data governance. Where is the data? Who has access to it, and so on and so forth. Now, in my opinion, the shift is exactly what you said. Justifying investment in cyber and data governance is difficult because it is about loss prevention, right? I'm a CEO, I don't want to spend money for something that in the best case scenario doesn't lead to absolutely anything, right? I want to create value. I want more customers, I want to expand my market, I want all of those. Now, if we can shift the narrative around the fact that it's not just about loss prevention, it's also value creation. And an example is business intelligence, right? If we can find ways to structure unstructured data, we're gonna know where is what and who has access to it, loss prevention. But also understand things such as, are we being efficient with our operations? Are there parts of our business or our infrastructure that should be decommissioned, that are just costing us money in maintenance and are not delivering value? So all of those, I think, the second bit, I think, is a much stronger argument to go and knock at the door of the CFO and say, hey, I need investment in data governance, cybersecurity, call it as you want. I'm not a big fan of the concept of data governance because I think it's difficult to understand, but something along those lines.
Right. And I don't know, Marco, do you remember the conversation we had? It was a film company.
Oh wow, yeah.
It was a long time ago. But this was kind of the inspiration for me, where back in the day, the films would be captured and then physically transported from on location to production and then to post-production, all these things. And this organization said, if we securely find a way to do this digitally, we can change the way this industry works, and we'll have a first run at this new opportunity. And they were very, very successful with that. So it was led by a secure method. Of course, it's cloud and it's data storage and all that. But for me, that was the inspiration of using data security to drive new business opportunity.
Well, for me, that's what I was going to ask, which is the use of technology and how new technology comes into play in the decision making. So AI, but also kind of like a vendor driven investment, right? Like the marketing, the buzz, zero trust or whatever it is, and does this become a factor in the decision making itself?
Yeah, look, there is one thing, without wanting to be too academic, there's a phenomenon called mimetic forces in action when companies make decisions. And this is not just cyber, this is any decision. And it kicks in particular when decision makers don't have enough information about where to go, if they should go A or B. The default approach when you don't have enough information is, what are our competitors doing?
Follow.
Exactly. Yeah, follow what everybody else is doing. And look, to be honest with you, in cybersecurity, considering how nascent our industry is compared to, say, HR, finance, marketing, whatever, it's quite understandable, right? So vendors obviously drive a lot of that, because one vendor has exposure to a number of other organizations. So they do know what the different organizations are doing. And they are actually able to replicate some of those things across the different organizations. So a lot of times companies approach vendors and ask the question, hey, what are you seeing in my industry? And what is best practices? The problem with cyber is that defining what best practice is incredibly challenging. And if that is missing, people just try to look at what everybody else is doing. Hopefully you can get a little bit higher than what the average is. But again, it's not perfect. It is what it is at this stage.
And you mentioned two other, I'll call them service categories, HR and marketing. To me, those are two industries, whatever you want to call them, that have really dialed up. If we understand our employees really, really well, use all that data we have about them, we can keep them productive, we can keep them healthy, we can get the most out of them as a resource. Same for marketing. If we dial that up, we use all our sales and marketing data, we can get the best leads to the sales, to the renewals, and it's all data driven. So I have this view that security data exists where we can do that same kind of dial up. I don't know if executive teams are ready for that. Sounds like maybe they are.
Well, I mean, there's more and more CDOs positions, being that chief data officer or chief digital officer, right, created. Now, there was a big drive a couple of years ago. It hasn't really been up to speed as much, and I don't really know why. But if you think about it, when you blend together loss prevention and value creation, as we said before, and just boil it down to, as you said, data, it makes a lot of sense to have a CDO that does a little bit of both. Now, you also don't want to half cook loss prevention and value creation. So, is there something that different parties need to do? So, you want to strengthen your loss prevention, well, you're going to give a task to the CEO and the CRO if you have a chief risk officer, right? Or somebody else in that type of role. It is still a lot of ongoing conversation, but I agree with you. At the end of the day, you boil it down to data, and then you decide where you want to go.
Yeah. Anything that inspired you in these days that you were here? You say you saw Joe Sullivan. We got to talk to him. We're actually in the same hotel, so we get to run into him too. He's a great guy. We had him on the show a few times, and we know the story he went through. But we thought we heard some feedback of his presentation.
I'm pretty sure everybody was excited about it.
What do you think about it?
I was very, very happy, and it was incredibly inspiring. So I shared that kind of feedback. I think he was able to show the power of storytelling. And I believe there is actually a couple of presentations on storytelling in cybersecurity, which is another interesting perspective that is not very common in the cyber industry. So incredibly inspiring. I kind of looked at, it was good for him to boil down his experience and then translate it in actions for people. And I saw a lot of people leaving the room really thinking about what they just taken part of, because it was incredibly powerful. And in general, this is a great conference. There's a lot going on, obviously, as all of these big conferences. I think speaking with people, everybody loves the networking side of it, where in 3 days you can really get to meet a lot of people, have exciting conversations. I finally managed to see people in person that I've never seen in my life, other than Zoom or Teams, right?
Yeah, that's always a plus.
It's great. Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to ask this question yet, so I'm gonna give it to you first.
Okay.
And it's related to
You're
Joe.
lucky.
I'm lucky, I don't know.
Related to Joe's experience, we have a good friend, Tim Brown, who's also experienced some challenges in the U.S. in the CISO role. And the reason I'm going to ask you the question is because of the new cyber law with the reporting kind of gives a safe, it enters the idea that there's a safe space to share, right, as you described. So my question is, in Australia, and I don't know if you have a view outside of Australia, the role of the CISO, in the US there's a lot of pressure, and now even some legal pressure as well. How do you see the CISO role in Australia in that regard?
Well, as you probably know, we're always a little bit behind what happens in the US, so we try to play catch up. But what happens in the US is a reasonable predictor of what's going to happen over in Australia. Now, I was quite surprised, to be honest. One of the topics I've been working on is board members' liability in case of cybersecurity and data breaches. And as you probably know, I think it was March 2023, I believe, SEC proposed a piece of legislation that would actually closely connect board members' actions with potential liability in case of data breaches. Now, that law was pushed back; it didn't go through. There's still obviously, instances where there could be personal liability for board directors in case of a data breach, and the idea was more about having board members disclose what cybersecurity competencies and skills they have, because that's the assumption is that, well, if they do know something about cyber, investors are going to be a little bit more happy to invest in that specific company, because a data breach, might still happen, but you're going to have that top leadership buy-in that is very much necessary. Now, all of that to say that we actually, so some of the comments were in the US where, board members have actually been let off the hook with this change in cybersecurity regulation. And again, I think the more sophisticated comment on that was that that's not exactly true. What has been growing is more burden on CISOs to produce the evidence for the directors that they're actually doing as a company the right things when it comes to cybersecurity. And in Australia, we're seeing the same dynamic.
So it is a squeeze.
It is a squeeze. And ASIC in Australia, the regulator in that case,
it's the SEC equivalent, right?
Yes, exactly. Has already, because they deal with investment as well. So they have already said that they're gonna hold board members accountable. Now, there is no specific regulation that connects cybersecurity responsibility and personal liability with board members. In Australia, everything boils down to the Corporations Act that says that board members have to act with duty of care and diligence. Obviously, if it emerges from investigation that the company has not invested enough in cybersecurity, where negligent in cybersecurity practices, that could kick in this clause of duty of care and diligence, because board members probably have not performed within this duty of care and diligence. So all of this long explanation to say we're saying similar dynamics, things are squeezing in, board members and top leaders in general have to be more accountable. They're going to become more demanding towards CISOs, which is going to increase the pressure on CISOs.
Yeah. Another reason not to be a CISO. No, I didn't say that.
Reason number one.
There's a reason I'm not. There's a reason I'm not a CISO. I have tremendous respect for them.
100%. Same.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it comes down to the fact that it's very complicated, and it's, as you said, and as we know, we expect to be a mature industry. We talk about maturity all the time, but it's a young industry. We're still figuring out as we go. I mean, what about the responsibility of the vendor?
Oh, yeah. No, they're off the hook.
I mean, right?
Yeah. No liability on that.
We saw a few things happen in the recent month.
Too.
Well, and third-party risk, just to finish off, is another massive topic here in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we can have a chat on that separately.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you are definitely welcome to join us besides the regional event here, which we're happy to be, and hopefully we'll be back next year. I wouldn't say no.
Of course.
And then, of course,
Trip to Australia is always good, right?
Yeah, and you can join us on one of our online episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
On redefining cybersecurity with Sean, I'll be part of it too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
super
for having
fun,
me.
super informative.
Really great conversation.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yep. And,
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much.
You. And for everybody watching, you can get in touch with any of our guests just by checking out all the podcasts that we've been publishing. There is way many more where this came from, because we're still in this room for a while.
It looks like separate episodes to you. It's one long episode.
Exactly, but we will be filming on outside in the center, expo center as well. So stay tuned, subscribe, and we got many more coming. I don't know how many.
I don't
10?
know. I think 10 from today. Something like that. So
all right.
Wow.
Let's
Great.
go.
fantastic having
Thanks
you.
for
Thank
your
you.
time, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks.
ThreatLocker is a zero-trust endpoint protection platform providing enterprise-level cybersecurity to organizations globally. With ThreatLocker, you only allow what you need and block everything else, including ransomware. Learn more at threatlocker.com. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sean and Marco's on-location event coverage conversations. Please take a moment to give the show a good rating and leave a comment. Remember to share this podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues. Come back for more conversations and follow Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli as they continue their journey toward redefining cybersecurity and society.